good morning, Sister Mary Ann Ennis.
Good morning, Jody.
Previously known as Sister Grace Marian.
You remember that,
I
yes?
remember that, yes. We had the privilege of living with one another.
We did indeed.
Yes, or I should say I had the privilege of living with you.
Oh, I
Sister James Margaret
Yes.
Cullen was our superior.
Our superior, yes.
Wasn't she amazing?
Yes, she was an amazing person.
Yes.
That was a large house, Jody.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, it was a good community.
Yes, amen.
Yes,
And the parish itself and the students and their parents, I still keep in contact with.
Do you?
Mhm,
Oh, that's
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, 3 or 4 from that.
From that
Yes,
place?
yes.
You know, I think Maria Brown's
Mhm.
brother,
Yes.
wasn't he one of the associates
Yes,
there
at the
Precious
time,
Yes, yes.
Yes. Are you do you hold the esteemed position of being the shortest Adrian Dominican sister?
Well, you know, I think there might be one shorter. I think our little Garcia sister, remember her
That's
name?
okay.
Yeah.
Is she here?
Well, we can look look
She's
eye
here
to
on
eye
camera.
is what it is.
Oh,
so-
really? Oh, that must be comfortable.
That's wonderful. Anytime I can look eye to eye to someone.
I am just thrilled when I see you step up to the preach the word.
I love
You
the
were a
preaching.
born preacher.
Thank you, Jody.
Yes.
I didn't always feel or know that. In fact, you know, one point in my life, I had finished school, and I went to Nadine because she was our study person, and I said, I have money left over and time.
You had money left?
Left over from school.
Oh, okay.
And time, and I'd like to do a 30-day retreat. So it was on that 30-day retreat in Lantana, Florida, near the ocean. Oh, it was beautiful. But that's where I started thinking about the charism of the order and who's doing it. Not that I felt I had any particular gift. In fact, there was hesitancy in who am I, you know, or who to do this. But then I realized, no, this is God's word. It's not our word. So that kind of freed me. And then I came back to Adrian, and I heard about the preaching team. Sister Marie Carol Hurley, our sister, was one of the first women.
Really?
And, you know, I talked to my spiritual director, and I talked to Nadine Foley about it, and she said, go see. When I left her office that day, I went down to Mass. John Kiefer was our Dominican.
Right.
Yes, John
Great
Kiefer.
Dominican.
A great Dominican, who later was on the team with us. But anyway, John was celebrating Mass, and I looked over, and there was Marie Carol Hurley. And I said to her, could we have lunch and talk? And she said, oh, of course, of course. And, you know, from that time on, I went back to West Virginia with her. She was driving back, saw the team, and I stayed 2 or 3 days. And they were saying to me, come. And I said, oh, no, I don't make decisions that quick. I mean, it was a wonderful, they were talking my language, all of that. And just the poor in the South, you know, and they went to universities and colleges and things, but basically a lot of the poor parishes in the South. And, you know, at that point, so the South, very fundamentalist, and of course, but they accepted the word. And so if you could just give
Share
them a
the
little
word.
bit of Lectio Divina, and that's kind of what we did in the homes. And
You went to the homes?
we went to the homes.
Oh.
We'd preach at the masses in the church, the little churches or big churches. But then before we came, we had a process that we sent out, and families would volunteer their homes. And so we'd go into the homes morning and night, because in the morning, generally it would be the women, you
Yes.
know, and at nighttime it could be family, it could be the husbands, the wives, or single, whoever. And it ended up being Catholics, non-Catholics. Oh, it was wonderful. And before we would leave that parish, we would train a core group of people, about group understanding and just to share the word and share their faith. And I'll tell you, Jody, that's where my love of the word and my own faith grew, because of the people. I mean, you heard their life stories, you heard their connection with their God, through the scripture, and so it was life-giving.
And they were thirsty.
And they were very hungry for the word, yes. It was.
Did your team live together?
We did. The Bishop Hodges in West Virginia had this humongous peony farm at the top, overlooking the Ohio River. It was up in the top of the mountain near Wheeling, West Virginia. And when we went to talk to him, he said, I have a huge house. And the auxiliary bishop had lived there, but he didn't want to live there alone. It was 10 bedrooms and huge, And he said, you would be welcome to have the house. So we did, and the men had one side, and the women had another side. We cooked together, we prayed together. But the one thing I appreciated, when we would go out to the parishes, sometimes we'd be there 2 weeks, sometimes it would be 6 weeks, because we were also part of the evangelization team for the diocese. And when we came home, you are peopled. I mean, you were with people all day, and so we had nothing days. We would come home, and we didn't do anything. We just had quiet. And we wouldn't cook, we wouldn't pray, we just had quiet for a couple days.
And pick
then,
up when you
and
want
pick up
something.
the rhythm later.
And the food.
And the food.
Oh,
Yes,
wonderful.
yes.
So besides Marie Carol Hurley and eventually John?
Well, John Kiefer, Jude Siciliano, Marty Iott, excuse me, some of these folks have died now. Jim Campbell, a Dominican, and Bede Dennis. Now, Bede Dennis had been in Pakistan for 15 years.
Oh, my.
And he came back, and the men on the team knew Bede. It was the Southern Province men that had started this team. Jude and Jim Campbell had gone to Springbank, our retreat center in the South Carolina, and they did a month's retreat. And after that, they had the idea of the evangelization of going into the homes and going to these places, especially in the South. So that's really, they were the two that started it. And then our Mary Treese McCarthy had, she was on the team? I think she was on the leadership team, wasn't she, at that time? And I think she was the one that initiated a letter to the men about would it be possible for one of our sisters to join them, or two of them. And that was Marie Carol Hurley, the first, and her great gifts. I mean, she was wonderful.
Only matched by yours.
Oh, that's God's, not mine. I really don't. Our sisters are so great, they'll say, oh, good, you're going to, and I thought, oh, God.
Oh, good, you're going to preach.
And I thought, who am I? I still feel like you want my, but anyway.
What we all know as Dominicans is whatever we are doing in prayer or presence or active ministry, we are preaching.
Yes.
But then there's the formal.
There's the
formal preaching.
Yeah.
And not every Dominican is called to that.
Exactly.
Yes. And you obviously feel very comfortable and confident with the word.
I do.
Yes.
It's I guess the way God has touched me in my own journey, and so many people that I know. It's a great gift, great gift. So,
were there challenges along the way?
Oh yes, there were challenges. Living with men and women each person has their gifts. And so we'd have house meetings. And you know, house meetings with us, with the Dominican women.
Yeah,
Well,
but
they
wasn't
were
it-
challenging.
But the men.
The men. You know, I think we brought a gift from our teaching days of understanding group. And that's the men would come and they'd preach. They'd start the groups. Or we took turns, but when they started, it was talk, 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 talk. And we said, no, you have to listen, listen.
Sorry.
So when we'd start, you know, we would kind of encourage people to, and it was a wonderful sharing of faith. So we learned from each other. I learned a lot about study from the men. They were very faithful, at least a couple hours a day, real study. And the prayer together was so rich. You know, that was just God's gift.
Most amazing.
Oh, really?
Most amazing.
You know, we just had in the beginning was the word, the Dominican retreat.
Here on campus.
Here on campus, and there were 75 people at that retreat. And that was our format, kind of, when we'd give retreats. We also did that in the summer. We did different things in the summer. I worked in a home for battered kids. Oh, what a learning, what a learning.
While you were on the team.
While we were on the
in
team.
summertime.
We always did different things in the summer. We said it would keep us honest. You know what I mean? Not just speaking words, but
Reality.
living that out. And I'll never forget
Where
one.
was that?
Well, that was near Wheeling, because our base was in Wheeling, and there was a home for battered children.
Oh, just hearing that, my heart aches.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And we had seminarians who helped us out. And I remember coming in one morning, and I was the first one there, and it was like the 8th grade girls were fighting. And I thought, oh dear, how do I, okay. So I got them, and I separated them, and I put one in one room and one in the other room. And then when the guys came in, then we came out and we had a conversation.
Oh, my.
You never knew, you know.
Well, imagine what situations they have come from.
That's right.
What is a joy to hear that there was a place for abused children.
Yes, yeah. Our Bishop Hodges was so conscious, I think, of the poor. I mean, West Virginia was one of the poor, and maybe still is, one of the poorest states, you know, in the country.
Were you called as a team to go outside the
Oh,
state?
yes. Oh, yes. Yes, we were in Flint. We went to different places. So, and particularly when we do retreats, we'd go to almost every mother. I knew all the Dominican mother houses. And
Did you do one here?
Yes, we did a couple here, and it was richness. It really was. It was just a great.
So how long was your gift of being with the group?
Yes, almost 7.5 years.
Wow.
It was a long time, but the itineracy was one of the difficult things because you were living in other people's homes. The men usually were in the rectory, and if there was room, the sisters would be there too. But generally, we lived with families or convents, but there weren't too many convents in the South, you know. I remember one family, I'll never forget that family. The husband had been a chemist, and he was in a chemical explosion.
Oh, my.
So he was paraplegic. And the only way that Jim and Marie could communicate, he had like a typewriter. Remember, this was 1980s, so computers weren't, but he could, with one finger, type, and it would go on the screen. And that's how because he couldn't talk.
Oh, my.
That woman baked cakes to make a little extra money. They had 5 children. And we were not scheduled to go to that home. But after preaching at church one day, she came up to me and she said, "My husband can't come to church. Could you ever do a group in our home?" So we did an extra group on Saturday. It was wonderful. And we did the passage of not to worry, look at the birds of the air, look at the flowers, not to worry. Yeah. And we would share that. We would start out just with quiet, and then whoever was facilitating would give some input on the background and the history of that passage, and just a little bit, not real wordy, but simply. And we'd always ask a question that would relate. Have you ever had a time in your life where you were afraid, or you felt that God was not hearing or not answering? Well, anyway, we'd do that and go around the circle, and they would, oh my goodness.
Did he type something?
And no, he was just listening.
Oh,
He
okay.
didn't type anything at that point. But at the break, we always had a break in the middle because you gather people around the word and food.
Yes.
And we always had this little break. And Marie came up to me and she said, Marian, last night, you won't believe this, but we have the custom of reading a little bit of scripture before we get ready for bed. And she said, I opened to that passage.
Oh, my heavens.
And she said, I just couldn't read that passage. I was so tired. I didn't know how. The money was, we were short, and the children. She was just really distraught. And she said, I threw the Bible on the floor.
Oh, my.
And Jim started with his finger. And he said to her, all I have is trust.
Wow.
She said, oh, Marian, I heard it.
Oh,
I
my.
heard it then.
Oh.
So
How
it's
beautiful.
Oh, that couple. And their last name was Beer, B-E-E-R. I said to her, do you like beer? And she said, oh, we have ours once in a while.
I've never heard anyone who had a name
You like beer?
or met anyone like that. Yes.
Oh, it was
Marian, how did you come to be an Adrian Dominican to begin with?
Oh, well, I never had our sisters.
Where were you born?
I was born in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, actually. But we lived in Beloit, Wisconsin, and Beloit is right on the southern Illinois-Wisconsin line. There's Beloit College is there. It was just at that point, probably just a smaller city. But my father's work changed, and he was a tool and die maker. So he was looking for a place of ministry, and Detroit was the car capital of the world at that point, Second World War. So when I was probably about 6 years old, we moved to Detroit. He went to different places. He went to LaGrange, and he went near Chicago, other places, Minnesota, but Detroit was where we ended up.
What, east or west side?
East side, and I went to Girls Catholic Central, which was an IHM, the Monroe IHM school, and I went all the way through there. They had a grade and high school. All the schools I've gone to have closed. Since I don't know if that's good
Once
or
you
bad.
left, they closed the
They
door.
closed the door. But it was good. The women were wonderful educators. And
So, where did you meet Adrian Dominican?
well, our family moved to Visitation Parish in Detroit.
But you were out of high school at this point.
I was just junior, I think, junior. Or no, I was a senior. That's right. And we moved to that parish. Used to go to morning mass, and I'd see these sisters in black cloak. And I started talking to Monsignor Markey. He was our pastor there. Wonderful, wonderful man.
I've heard his name before.
Yes,
Markey.
just Markey. And I said to him, I think I have a call, but I'm not sure where. I went through, those vocation books that had all the different communities. I looked through that, and I wrote to, where is Betty Doerr's community? It was up in New York somewhere east. It was a cloistered community.
Yes.
And then I went also in Detroit. They had just opened that Carmelite monastery behind Mary Grove, or near Mary Grove maybe. So I went through there. I went with my girlfriend Elise, and she was from Ireland. And she said, would you come with me? I really think I'd like to talk to them. Well, we went. I did all the talking.
To the Carmelites?
To the Carmelites, the sisters, you know. And Elise did not enter, and I did not enter there. But
what did Father or Monsignor Markey say?
Well, he said, go see my nuns. I said, who are they? And he said, they're the Adrian Dominicans, the sisters that are at church in the morning. So I told my mom and dad, or my family, I was going to the library, and I did. But I stopped by the house, and I can't remember if it was Brigetta. I think Sister Brigetta was there at the time. But there was other sisters, too, who talked to me. And so I went home, and I talked to Monsignor Markey a little bit, but I just prayed and I thought, I'm going to write to the Adrians. So I wrote my letter. I got a letter back. I had not told my family. I hadn't told anybody. I just thought, well, you know, we'll see what's what. The African women say what's what. So and we were at the breakfast table one morning, and I was telling my family about 4 of the girls from my graduating class were entering the IHM, 3 of them, the IHMs, and I named them. And my mom looked at me and she said, well, who's the 4th? And my dad said, oh, it's you. And I said, no, I'm not going to the IHMs, but I'm going to the Dominicans. And they looked at me because my sister at that point was 10 years older, and she was an Ignatian from Wisconsin.
Oh.
She had those sisters when we lived in Wisconsin. And I never thought about it, Jody. I mean, I
had
loved them.
Adrian Dominican?
No, she never had Adrian. She had the Sisters of St. Agnes.
Oh.
And she entered there.
Yes.
You know, even though we had moved, she was in high school when we moved. And she went back there. But I never thought of it. And you know, when she was dying, we talked about it a little bit. She said, I never asked you, Marian. And I said, Norm, I loved your sisters, but I just never thought of it. So maybe God had another plan.
Obviously.
We had different plans on this journey.
When, may I ask, when you picked up the beautiful ministry of chaplaincy?
That was after my sister had died. You know, when I was on the preaching team, there was another ministry in the middle of that, because we had come to Adrian to do a parish mission at St. Mary's Parish and St. Joe's. And while I was here, Mary Lou Putro was our mission coordinator, and we knew each other from before. And she said, Marian, let's have lunch together and come up to my office. We have a need. And I thought, oh my. And you know, Catherine Deutsch was in Africa, and Helen Dillon was with her but was ill. And Helen was coming home. And so Mary Lou said, we need a sister to work with young women who are in formation in Africa. I said, where is it and what language? I don't know. You know, and what do I do? Well, it ended.
Did you go?
I could not go.
Oh, my.
I said, yeah. I mean, I didn't say yes, right? I said, let me think about it. And I had to talk to the team because we had commitments. But they had a deacon who was going to be with us, a Dominican, for the summer for his field ministry. So they said, Marianne, go. And they blessed me. We had a ritual to go. And I did go, and it was just rich.
My.
But we had some scary things while I was there. In fact, one of their sisters is here this week. She's leaving this afternoon, Wendy. And when I was probably only a month in the culture, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we heard this awful sound, the sound they make. And some of the guys had surrounded the compound, and they broke in. They had axes, and
Oh, my.
panga is like a sickle, you know, they can cut their way through the fields. And they came in, and Catherine's room was first, and they broke in, and they wanted money. Of course, we didn't have a lot of money. The money we had, we put in books or in the underwear drawer. They never went there.
Yeah,
they,
yeah.
They destroyed, and they went every place else. Catherine had her logo on a chain, and they thought that was gold, so they pulled that off. But it was very frightening. I was in the back, and I didn't know what was happening, and the novices were upstairs. So after they finished Catherine's room, they went upstairs first, and the novices hid together in the bathroom stalls. They were all crunched together. But there was one, I'll never forget, Salome. She was very slow-moving person, very phlegmatic. And so she's standing at the top of the stairs, and they said, "Are you the headmistress?" She said, "Yes." Well, she was a novice. "Yes, I am." And they said, "Well, we want money." And she said, "Oh, no." She said, "We just went to the market and we spent all our money. There's no money." And so they kind of pushed her aside. I don't know, she wandered off somewhere. And they went into each room. And the money, the bursar for the house was, she was kind of she had stuff all over her room. Mm-hmm. So they opened the door, and there was money on the desk, but the desk was piled with papers and other things. So they probably thought, well, there's nothing there. Somebody's already messed it up, so we'll go on. And then the novice director was in the bathroom when this happened. And there was a pole outside that bathroom window that went down to a landing or the roof. So Manano went to the pole. She was no small number, and she's sliding down the pole. And one of the novices thought it was one of the bandits and fainted, saw her out the window. My. But anyway, they were in the house, I'd say, it seemed like forever, but it was probably about an hour.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it was a long time. And then they came back downstairs, and I could hear the handle on my door. I went under the bed because I had remembered Richard Speck and the nurses in Chicago.
Yes.
And that had happened, and I thought, well, the one that was saved was under the bed. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I thought of, really, Jody, was I'll never see my family again. I'll never see my friends. Relationship was the only thing that mattered at that point.
And here you are.
And here I am. I am. Trust has been the thread. Yeah. I'm telling you, you just trust it.
You trust. Well, before we end, I want to thank you for your ministry here at the Dominican Lives Center. I know you continued, even as a retired sister, to
in my 80th year.
Your 80th year, to minister once a week. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It's really the joy
as a chaplain.
Of my life.
Chaplain.
And the chaplains we have here are so wonderful.
We're very blessed.
They really are.
Yes.
We are very blessed.
And that includes you, dear preacher of the Word.
You, Jody.
God bless you, and thank you for your time today.